Hi, and thank you for joining with us on this really important session about resilience. We're going to take a 15-minute walk through some very important topics. My colleague John's going to help us through some thinking. John will introduce himself in a second, but just to set the scene, you can probably see from the pictures there who is who. And we have myself as MD of Goodfoot. Goodfoot Development has an initiative called the Heart Base, where we're approaching topics of well-being and resilience, especially in the light of the times that we're in. And John kindly is joining with us to discuss his expertise on resilience and the well-being space and the mindfulness space. So moving on, I'll just outline for us very quickly what the three key areas are that we're going to talk through. Then I'll hand over to John and we'll work our way through the time together. So we'll be looking at resilience and what it is, some steps that we can go through in order to build our resilience, and then some strategies to increase our energy. It's all about managing energy, not managing time. So over to you, John, as we get into what is resilience. But first, perhaps a quick introduction to yourself.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so I'm an expert in the world of burnout, resilience, mental health. My story is one of working in the legal space to the highest position I could find. I reached positions that I wanted to get to. I opened companies. And I was highly resilient as a person to allow me to manage those stress levels and run teams of people. My personal experience is that I found myself in a place of burnout after many years in this state. And so it became very interesting to me about how to manage burnout, how to recover from burnout and what actually causes that. And I suppose one of my passions is understanding the difference between what resilience is, and what resilience training is, and what burnout is, and how the two are very interactive, but also very separate. So today's session is going to be about what's resilience, how can we use it to keep ourselves from burnout, how can we use it to become highly functioning professionals who get to exactly where they want to go to in their life, through managing stress and performing to the maximum capacity, but also recognizing that resilience isn't going to help you when you get to a certain level of stress. So that's what we're looking to cover today.
Fantastic. So let's move on to that then, John. So here we go. What is resilience? We have an interesting diagram there for you to outline to us.
So I like working with a number of paradigms. So when I say paradigm is a mechanism that we would use to explain a subject, so like a framework, if you will. The MTQ48 looks at control, commitment, confidence, and challenge, and the MTQ48 is a psychometric test that measures somebody's levels of resilience. And how it does that, it identifies that somebody who's highly resilient is able to emotionally regulate their mind and their body. They're the type of people that don't get fazed if something just blows up in their face, high level of demand from their boss. You know what? They're able to keep calm and focused. And commitment, they will never give up. They're goal focused, they're goal orientated. It's not a negative thing, but they're driving forward. They have that energy and commitment to moving forward and achievement. They don't mind challenges. They look at obstacles in life as an opportunity to learn and to challenge themselves, and have an inner confidence, a powerhouse of a human being. So this is the epitome of resilience. And the MTQ48 psychometric test is what the experts would say a very good measure of a person. So it's like a benchmark. If someone's scoring high on this psychometric, they're displaying high levels of resilience.
And what interests me on this one, John, is in the grey area of that circle there, we've got grit at the top, which is what I conventionally think is mental toughness. You got to have a gritty attitude. But equally important is engagement at the bottom, which is a willingness to discuss and to use other people's thoughts and ideas and interact. So it's not just being a very tough individual on your own. Is that right?
And I think that's a very good point. That's exactly what I want to talk about with resilience, because resilience is often thought of as a very insular thing, something that we develop as individuals. Whereas the MTQ48 and models that I work with look at resilience as a holistic thing. You know, how can we become resilient as a team, as an organization? And there's certain practices and programs that we can put in place that can help develop resilience. And that's what we're going to look at today, is what are the steps that we can put into a program or an organization to help develop individual and organizational resilience.
Okay, that's superb. So moving on then, you're recommending 6 steps for us to consider in building our resilience.
That's right, and we've created here at Goodfoot a resilience course which is accredited to the highest level, and it incorporates these elements. So on the first level, we want to become aware. So awareness is like the first step. We can't become resilient unless we're aware of ourselves, our thoughts and our feelings, and aware of our environment, you know, our work colleagues and our workspace. Once we become more aware and more in tune, it's probably a better way of saying it, we want to become more attentive. So we want to focus in actually, how am I feeling? What is going on? I'm going to draw my attention to that. I'm going to start looking at how I can become more focused at work. Perseverance is something that takes a little bit of time to develop. So through courses and coaching, we can develop this. We can do this work by ourselves as well. Not giving up, setting an intention, a goal, and then developing the skills needed to persevere. This links a lot to confidence training, working with, you know, restrictive thought patterns, the imposter syndrome. Reticular activating system is a part of the brain structure that holds us in the past. We remember a bad old event that's happened and we think, oh, I can't do it. Well, perseverance is all about looking at that, unpicking it and helping you to be positive and moving forwards. And that's why it moves into positivity, because positivity, confidence, inner strength all comes from being happy, being more positive towards ourselves and others. The team's more positive and happy we are. And then we move into things like energy as well. So energy levels is the energy of the team, energy of ourselves, you know, looking to feel physically and mentally more alert and having an abundance of physical health. And this can be things like physical training, exercise, but it also can be doing work like mindfulness and yoga. And finally, kindfulness underpins every part of the steps. It's about developing a culture within our business, within our lives, within ourselves that is connected and kind. It's connected to our friends and our support mechanisms. It's connected to our work, and it's a support system to help us become more resilient, because all the work of positive psychologists like Sean Aker are suggesting that resilient people have strong communities, kind communities that support them and help them become more resilient.
Okay, no, that's really useful. And just a plug for Goodfoot, John, we've been working together on getting the resilience course accredited, which is now accredited by the Institute of Leadership and Management. So we have recognition that this is a really, really useful thought process to go through. And what strikes me about it very, very quickly is I always thought resilience was based on the positivity bit, you know, all to do with positive thinking. But I think what you're saying is that you start a lot earlier than that. You start with awareness, attention, and perseverance, and then the positivity starts to build, which would explain to me why positive thinking is sometimes so hard. You kind of get exhausted trying to be positive sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that as part of this exercise today, what we're looking to do is look at the energy element, because I think that's the most misunderstood part of resilience. People, like you said, think it's all a mindset thing. It's all about the mind. We're too mindy in this country, too mindy at work. We need to physically engage. If we have more capacity in ourselves, we've got more energy, we're able to focus better, we're able to get more done in less time, we're able to become more strong and more robust because we feel good, we can bounce back. And this comes down to our physical energy. So today we're going to look at that element. How does energy work, physical work, make us more resilient? And why is that massively important? You're right, Mark. Focusing on positive mindset is not going to do anything unless you've got those other steps in place.
So moving on to the energy thing, as you're going to take us on to something practical, which is fantastic. For 4 different types of energy here, John. And I think that we acknowledge some of them, don't we? Mental energy and physical energy, but the emotional energy is spiritual energy. That's kind of kept a little bit quiet in business conversations, right? We don't talk about those a lot.
Sure. And the work of Tony Schwartz gives us some robust, empirical data to support this. This isn't just some idea, Look at his work, Tony Schwartz. It underpins our resiliency course. But particularly the spiritual purpose in energy is very important. Now, that's our purpose. Why do we go to work? If we lose the purpose of why we go to work, we're not going to go, or we're less likely to go. When we come to burnout, we actually lose our purpose. We lose our energy. We don't want to get to work. And that's what happens when people are not resilient. They become highly stressed. They lose their purpose and they drop out of work, which is what we want to avoid.
And so what we're saying for resilience is that all those four components, to face them in ourselves and with people that are close to us, to talk about them, to discuss them. If we're emotionally under stress, to be able to talk about it. Spiritually, we're not finding purpose, to be able to address it. That's as important as the mental positivity, mental focus, and also physical, which I think a lot of organizations are starting to acknowledge now. The physical health of staff and employees is as important as the mental sharpness, right? So what you're saying is to us is that all these four are critical for our attention.
Yes.
And then I think as we move on, you're going to explain, I think this was from Tony Schwartz too, wasn't it? This concept of ultradian rhythms, which we'll get into in a second, but you were going to explain this chart to us as an exercise for us to do, right?
Yeah, and I think that our viewers should just look at this and look at the four quadrants, pause the video at home or whatever, or in your offices, and just try and place yourself in one of those four quadrants. What words jump out to you? So once you've identified one quadrant that really jumps out to you, try and identify a second quadrant that jumps out to you. So often we will be within one or two of the quadrants in a day.
Right. And I think a great question you asked me was, where have you been mostly in the last week? And that's a really good way to look at these quadrants here. Which one we spend most of our time in the workplace. So, okay.
And that's exactly right, Mark. And it's about understanding, that we want to become more in the performance zone, because when we're in the performance zone, we're optimistic, we've got a lot of energy, we're performing well at work. But how do we get into that zone? Einstein talked about the eureka zone, the eureka moment. And that's all about being in the recovery zone, because the recovery zone is when the magic happens. It's when we get our purpose back. It's when we get our joy for life, our joy for our jobs back. It helps prevent burnout if we can become more happy and more aware and more connected. So what is the recovery zone? The recovery zone is when we take those moments to go out and have a walk, have a pause, how we relax in a day, So the ultradian rhythm idea is very important because it's talking about having an activity period of focusing at work for 120 minutes, an hour or two, and then making sure you've got a consistent 20-minute break.
Wow.
Put your phone down, get away from your computer, get out, switch off. Because if you do that, you're going to be more likely to get back into the performance zone again and to be focused for those 120 minutes.
Well, that's very, very interesting, because my inclination when I first saw this was I should be in the top right. Yeah, I should be in the top right all day. I should be performing.
We can only stay there for 120 minutes max.
Yeah, and what you're saying is that actually we should be oscillating between the top right and the bottom right, and be consciously working our timetable that we do that. So we actually spend the 20 minutes in the bottom right, deliberately switching off the pressures for that time, and then coming back into it every 2 hours. You say every hour and a half or 2 hours we do that, right?
Yeah, and that's what I want our viewers today to take away from this, is that if you want to become more resilient, one simple, practical exercise you can build into your day right now: 20 minutes break, 120 minutes activity. Simple. Oscillate between the two.
And it makes sense to me very much just from the athletics point of view. You never see a 100-meter runner running 100 meters all the time in order to train, right? They would just not be able to do the actual event by the end of, well, probably after a day you've had enough of that. So the training to achieve that goal is made up of rest periods as much as it's made up of intense activity periods. So we need to apply that to our normal practices, right? Not just for the athletes. Great, that's really, really good. So moving through to the last bit then, John, what I thought would be worth offering folk who are watching is do feel free to contact John at that email address there if you've got any thoughts or ideas you'd like to chat through with him. We are at Goodfoot, as we've mentioned, running webinars, training, coaching in resilience, well-being regularly now. And I think, John, a last word from you on that third point. The main point of this 15-minute quick video is to encourage people to adopt their own personal approach. Would that be right? If you could give us a parting word on that one, that would be great.
Yeah, we each have individual circumstances, and we each have different lives, different stresses and things. It's about making changes in our lives that are going to impact us positively, and that's why going on to a specific course or having specific coaching that's tailored for your lives or your businesses is very important. Some generic resilience training is not going to help. You've got to take these things seriously and work on an individual and an organisational level.
Okay, thank you, John, and thank you everybody for watching.